The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training ground as Sarah Martinez carefully cleaned the barrel of her rifle. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, checking every component with the attention to detail that had earned her respect among the instructors. At 23, she had already proven herself as one of the most dedicated recruits in the program. But today felt different somehow. The other trainees were scattered across the range, some struggling with their equipment, while others chatted nervously about the upcoming evaluation. Sarah preferred the quiet moments like these, when she could focus entirely on her weapon and block out the doubt that sometimes crept into her mind. She had grown up in a small farming town where hunting was a way of life. But military precision was an entirely different challenge. As she adjusted the scope with delicate movements, Sarah noticed someone approaching from her peripheral vision. She didn't look up immediately, choosing instead to continue her methodical preparation. The footsteps stopped just behind her position, and she could sense someone watching her work. "Well, well," came a voice dripping with amusement. "Look what we have here." Sarah finally glanced up to see Marcus Chen, one of the program's star snipers, standing with his arms crossed and a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Marcus had earned his reputation through exceptional marksmanship scores and an attitude that bordered on arrogance. His uniform was pristine, his posture confident, and his eyes held the kind of certainty that came from never having failed at anything important. "Just preparing for today's session," Sarah replied quietly, turning her attention back to her rifle. She had learned early in the program that engaging with Marcus often led to unnecessary drama, and she preferred to let her performance speak for itself. Marcus chuckled and moved closer, his shadow falling across her workspace. "I've been watching you, Martinez. You spend more time cleaning that thing than actually shooting it. All that careful preparation won't mean much if you can't deliver when it counts." Other trainees began to notice the interaction, some stopping their own preparations to observe what was unfolding. Sarah could feel the weight of their attention, but she continued her work with steady hands. She had faced skepticism before, both here and back home, where some people still believed that certain skills belonged exclusively to men. "Preparation is part of the process," Sarah said evenly, checking the rifle's alignment one final time. "My grandfather always said that respect for your weapon is the first step toward mastering it." Marcus laughed outright at this, causing several nearby trainees to look over with interest. "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man, but this isn't about philosophy. This is about results." He gestured toward the distant targets that dotted the range. "Anyone can clean a rifle until it shines, but can you actually use it?" The challenge in his voice was unmistakable, and Sarah finally looked up to meet his gaze directly. She saw the confidence there, but also something else. A hint of genuine curiosity mixed with the desire to prove his superiority. Marcus had been the unchallenged top performer in their class, and he seemed to view her methodical approach as either amusing or threatening. "I suppose we'll find out during the evaluation," Sarah replied. Her voice calmed despite the tension she felt building in her chest. She had worked too hard to get to this point to let someone else's doubts affect her focus. The other trainees had definitely taken notice now, forming a loose circle around the two of them. Training sessions often became informal competitions, but there was something different about this moment. Marcus had never directly challenged another recruit so publicly, and everyone seemed to sense that something significant was about to happen. Marcus glanced around at their audience, then back at Sarah with that characteristic smirk. "Why wait for the evaluation? That target over there is 800 meters out, well within range for someone with real skill." He paused dramatically, letting his words sink in. "Show me you can hit that target, Martinez. Show all of us that all this careful preparation actually means something." The silence that followed was heavy with anticipation. Sarah could feel every pair of eyes focused on her, waiting to see how she would respond to such a direct challenge. Some of the other trainees looked excited at the prospect of an impromptu demonstration, while others seemed nervous about the potential for conflict. Sarah stood slowly, her rifle held with practiced ease. She looked out toward the distant target Marcus had indicated, then back at his confident face. The smart thing would be to decline, to wait for the official evaluation where everything would be properly supervised and recorded. But something in his tone, in the way he had dismissed her preparation and questioned her abilities, stirred a quiet determination in her chest. 800 meters, she repeated quietly, more to herself than to him. It was a challenging distance requiring not just accuracy, but an understanding of wind conditions, bullet drop, and dozens of other variables that could affect the shot. Marcus nodded, his smirk widening. Too far for you? We could make it easier, say 400 meters? Even 300 if that's more your speed. The condescension in his voice was the final push Sarah needed. She had spent countless hours preparing for moments like this, not just since joining the program but throughout her entire life. Her grandfather had taught her that true skill revealed itself under pressure, and that preparation without courage was meaningless. 800 meters is fine, Sarah said, her voice carrying a quiet confidence that seemed to surprise even herself. But let's make this interesting. Marcus raised an eyebrow at Sarah's unexpected response, clearly not having anticipated that she would accept his challenge so readily. The circle of trainees around them grew larger as word spread across the range that something significant was about to happen. Even some of the instructors began to take notice, though they maintained their distance to see how the situation would unfold. Interesting how? Marcus asked, his voice carrying a note of caution that hadn't been there moments before. He had expected Sarah to either back down or accept a simple demonstration, not to propose raising the stakes. Sarah took a moment to assess the wind conditions, noting the way the grass moved at various distances and the slight haze that indicated changing air density. Her grandfather had taught her to read these signs instinctively, to understand that successful shooting was as much about environmental awareness as it was about mechanical precision. If I hit the target, you admit that preparation and respect for your weapon are just as important as natural talent, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. And if I miss, I'll acknowledge that all my careful preparation doesn't guarantee results. The murmur from the gathered trainees indicated that the stakes had just become more than a simple shooting demonstration. This was now about competing philosophies of marksmanship, about whether methodical preparation could match raw talent and confidence. Marcus considered her proposal for a moment, his eyes studying her face for any sign of doubt or uncertainty. He had built his reputation on quick, instinctive shooting, trusting his natural abilities and rarely spending much time on the detailed preparation that Sarah seemed to favor. In his mind, overthinking led to hesitation, and hesitation led to missed opportunities. Deal, Marcus said finally, extending his hand with theatrical flair. But let's add one more element. We both take the shot. Best result wins everything. Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness at this addition, but she shook his hand firmly. She had committed herself to this challenge, and backing down now would undermine everything she had worked to build. Besides, she had confidence in her preparation and training, even if she couldn't match Marcus's natural swagger. The gathered trainees began to buzz with excitement as the challenge transformed into a direct competition between two very different approaches to marksmanship. Some of them had already begun placing informal bets on the outcome, while others simply seemed thrilled to witness what promised to be an impressive display of skill. Instructor Rodriguez, a veteran sniper with decades of experience, finally approached the group. His weathered face showed neither approval nor disapproval, but Sarah could see the keen interest in his eyes. Rodriguez had been watching both her and Marcus throughout the program, and she suspected he had his own opinions about their different methods. If you're going to do this, Rodriguez said in his gravelly voice, we do it properly. Official targets, measured distance, witnessed results. He paused to look at both challengers seriously. And no complaints about the outcome afterward regardless of what happens. Sarah nodded immediately, grateful for the instructor's intervention. Official supervision would ensure fairness and prevent any disputes about the results. Marcus also agreed, though she could see him mentally calculating whether the formal structure would help or hinder his chances. Rodriguez dispatched 2 trainees to verify the exact distance to the target and to ensure that the range was clear of any obstacles or safety concerns. The 800-meter target was positioned at the far end of the range, a standard bullseye, that would require precision to hit consistently at that distance. While they waited for the preparations to be completed, Sarah continued her methodical routine. She checked her rifle's zero once more, calculated the approximate bullet drop for the distance, and studied the environmental conditions that might affect her shot. The wind was relatively calm but variable, requiring careful timing and compensation. Marcus, meanwhile, seemed to be trying to project confidence through casual conversation with some of the other trainees. He made jokes about the challenge and expressed certainty about his chances, but Sarah noticed that his eyes kept drifting toward the distant target. Despite his outward confidence, he was clearly taking the competition seriously. "Distance confirmed at 810 meters, called one of the trainees who had been sent to verify the setup. "Target is clear and ready." Rodriguez nodded and gestured for both competitors to take their positions. A firing line had been established with 2 shooting mats placed side by side, each offering the same angle and conditions for the shot. The gathered crowd of trainees arranged themselves safely behind the firing line, their excitement palpable. "Standard competition rules," Rodriguez announced. "1 shot each taken within 2 minutes of being given the command to fire. We'll evaluate based on proximity to center mass and overall accuracy." Sarah settled onto her shooting mat and began her final preparations. She adjusted her position slightly to account for her natural point of aim, checked her breathing rhythm, and ran through the mental checklist that had become second nature to her. Every movement was deliberate and purposeful, reflecting months of careful training and years of experience. Marcus took his position with fluid confidence, his body settling into the shooting stance with the kind of natural ease that had made him the program's standout performer. His rifle seemed to be an extension of himself, and his preparation was minimal but efficient. Within seconds, he appeared ready to take his shot. The contrast between their approaches was stark and immediately noticeable to everyone watching. Sarah's methodical preparation stood in sharp relief against Marcus's intuitive readiness, representing 2 fundamentally different philosophies about how to achieve accuracy under pressure. "Shooters ready?" Rodriguez called out, his voice carrying clearly across the range. Both Sarah and Marcus indicated their readiness, though Sarah took a few extra seconds to ensure that every aspect of her setup was perfect. She could feel the weight of expectation from the watching trainees, but she forced herself to focus exclusively on the mechanics of the shot ahead. "You may commence firing when ready," Rodriguez announced, starting the 2-minute timer that would govern their attempts. The silence that descended over the range was profound, broken only by the gentle whisper of wind through the grass and the distant sound of other training activities. Sarah forced herself to block out everything except the target ahead and the rifle in her hands. Her breathing settled into the slow, controlled rhythm that her grandfather had taught her during countless hours in the woods behind their family farm. Marcus appeared ready to fire almost immediately, his natural talent allowing him to acquire the target quickly and confidently. His breathing was steady, his position solid, and his focus entirely on the distant bullseye. Several of the watching trainees seemed to expect him to take his shot within the first 30 seconds. But Sarah knew that rushing, even when you felt ready, was often the difference between a good shot and a perfect one. She continued her methodical approach, making micro-adjustments to her position and carefully reading the environmental conditions one final time. A slight shift in wind direction caught her attention, and she waited for it to settle before proceeding. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. Sarah could sense the impatience of some observers, probably wondering why she was taking so long when Marcus appeared ready to fire at any moment. But she had learned to trust her process, to believe that proper preparation would ultimately yield better results than quick action. Finally, Sarah felt everything align perfectly. Her position was stable, her breathing controlled, and the environmental conditions optimal. Through her scope, the target appeared crystal clear, and she could see exactly where she needed to place her shot. The familiar calm that preceded her best shooting performances settled over her like a comfortable blanket. The rifle's report echoed across the range with a sharp crack that seemed to hang in the air for an extended moment. Sarah maintained her position, following through on the shot exactly as she had been trained, keeping the rifle steady until the bullet had time to reach its target. Almost immediately after Sarah's shot, Marcus fired as well. His rifle barked with authority, and his follow-through was smooth and professional. The timing was so close that some of the observers might have thought they fired simultaneously, but Rodriguez and the more experienced trainees noted the slight delay. Both shooters remained in position while spotters with high-powered scopes called out the results. The tension among the watching trainees was evident as everyone strained to hear the assessment of 2 shots that had looked impressive from the firing line. First shot, Martinez, called the spotter positioned near the target. There was a pause as he carefully examined the target through his scope. Center ring, approximately 2 inches high and 1 inch left of center. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the gathered trainees. Hitting the center ring at 800 meters was an excellent result by any standard, and Sarah felt a surge of quiet satisfaction at the confirmation that her careful preparation had paid off. Second shot, Chen, the spotter continued. Another pause followed as he assessed Marcus's result. Center ring as well, approximately 3 inches right and 1 inch low of center. The crowd's excitement was palpable as they realized both shooters had achieved impressive results. Hitting the center ring twice in a row at that distance was unusual even among experienced marksmen, and it meant the competition would be decided by inches rather than obvious superiority. Rodriguez walked over to examine both rifles, checking to ensure that neither shooter had gained an unfair advantage through equipment modifications or other factors. His inspection was thorough but quick, and he nodded approvingly at the condition of both weapons. Both excellent shots, Rodriguez announced to the gathered group. Martinez takes the win by approximately 1 inch overall proximity to center mass, but both results demonstrate exceptional marksmanship at this distance. The reaction from the watching trainees was mixed. Some seemed disappointed that the competition hadn't produced a more decisive winner, while others appeared impressed that both competitors had performed so well under pressure. Sarah felt relief more than triumph, grateful that her careful approach had proven effective when it mattered most. Marcus's reaction was more complex. He extended his hand to Sarah with genuine respect, his earlier smirk replaced by something approaching admiration. "That was exceptional shooting," he said sincerely. "I may have underestimated the value of your preparation methods." Sarah shook his hand firmly, appreciating his gracious response to the narrow defeat. "You shot incredibly well, too. A few inches difference at that distance could come down to luck as much as skill." But Rodriguez overheard her comment and shook his head. Luck had nothing to do with either of those shots. What we witnessed was two different but equally valid approaches to precision marksmanship. Both executed at a very high level. The instructor's assessment carried weight with all the trainees, and his words seemed to diffuse any potential tension between the two competitors. Instead of creating a rivalry, the challenge had demonstrated that excellence could be achieved through different methods and philosophies. As the crowd began to disperse and normal training activities resumed, several trainees approached both Sarah and Marcus with questions about their techniques and preparation methods. The challenge had sparked genuine interest in improving marksmanship skills, rather than simply determining who was superior. Sarah found herself explaining her grandfather's teachings about weapon care, environmental awareness, and the importance of mental preparation. She discovered that several other trainees had similar backgrounds in hunting or competitive shooting, and they were eager to share techniques and experiences. Marcus, meanwhile, was discussing the mental aspects of shooting under pressure and the importance of trusting your instincts when conditions were right. His natural confidence and quick decision-making had their own value, and several trainees were interested in developing those qualities. Rodriguez observed these informal teaching sessions with obvious approval. "This is what training should accomplish," he told Sarah quietly, as she cleaned her rifle after the demonstration. "Not just individual excellence, but the sharing of knowledge that makes everyone better." Sarah nodded, understanding that the challenge had achieved something more valuable than simply proving a point. It had created an opportunity for learning and growth that benefited the entire group, rather than just establishing a hierarchy of skill levels. 3 weeks after the challenge, Sarah noticed that the dynamics within their training group had shifted in subtle but meaningful ways. The informal competition had broken down some of the barriers that had existed between trainees with different backgrounds and experience levels. Marcus had begun incorporating some of Sarah's methodical preparation techniques into his own routine, while she had worked on developing the quick decision-making skills that came so naturally to him. The change was most evident during their advanced training exercises, which had become significantly more challenging as the program progressed. Today's exercise involved a complex scenario that required both precision shooting and tactical decision-making under time pressure. The trainees were divided into teams, and Sarah found herself paired with Marcus for the first time since their range encounter. Their assignment involved navigating through a series of shooting positions while engaging targets at varying distances and angles. The course was designed to test not only marksmanship skills but also the ability to adapt quickly to changing conditions and work effectively with a partner. "Remember what Rodriguez always says," Marcus commented as they studied the course layout. "Perfect shots don't matter if you're too slow to take them when the opportunity presents itself." Sarah nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his observation, while also thinking about her grandfather's teachings. But rushing into position without proper setup leads to missed opportunities too. "We need to find the right balance." They spent several minutes developing a strategy that would allow them to move efficiently through the course while maintaining the accuracy standards they had both demonstrated during their previous challenge. The key would be dividing responsibilities in a way that played to each of their strengths. As they moved through the first section of the course, Sarah was impressed by how quickly Marcus could acquire targets and make accurate assessments of distance and wind conditions. His natural instincts were remarkably reliable, and he seemed to process environmental information almost subconsciously. Marcus, in turn, appreciated the way Sarah's methodical approach ensured that they didn't overlook important details or make careless mistakes. Her systematic thinking helped them avoid several potential errors that could have cost them valuable time or accuracy points. Their partnership was working so well that they completed the first half of the course ahead of schedule and with perfect accuracy scores. Other training teams were struggling with various aspects of the exercise, but Sarah and Marcus had found a rhythm that allowed them to support each other's strengths while compensating for any weaknesses. The second half of the course presented more challenging scenarios, including several targets that required precise timing and coordination between team members. One particular challenge involved simultaneous shots at 2 different targets, requiring perfect communication and trust between partners. "On my count," Sarah whispered as they settled into position for the coordinated shot. 3, 2, 1, fire. Both rifles fired within milliseconds of each other, and both targets showed clean hits in the center rings. The precision of their coordination impressed even the observing instructors, who were taking notes on each team's performance for later evaluation. As they moved to the final shooting position, Sarah realized that something significant had changed in how she approached these challenges. The influence of Marcus's confidence and quick decision-making had helped her become more adaptable and responsive, while still maintaining the careful preparation that had always been her strength. Marcus had undergone a similar evolution, incorporating elements of Sarah's systematic approach without losing the natural intuition that made him such an effective marksman. The result was that both of them had become more complete shooters than they had been individually. The final challenge of the course was the most difficult, a single target at maximum range, partially obscured by environmental obstacles, with a time limit that prevented extensive preparation. It was exactly the type of scenario that would test everything they had learned about balancing speed with accuracy. "Your shot," Marcus said without hesitation. "Your preparation methods give us the best chance at this distance." Sarah felt a moment of pressure at his confidence in her abilities, but she quickly settled into her familiar routine. She had learned to compress her preparation process without sacrificing essential elements, finding ways to gather the information she needed more efficiently. The shot felt perfect as it left the rifle, and the spotter's confirmation of another center ring hit brought cheers from some of the other trainees who had been following their progress through the course. Sarah and Marcus had not only completed the exercise successfully, but had set a new record for both speed and accuracy. Rodriguez approached them as they finished cleaning their equipment after the exercise. "Impressive performance from both of you," he said with the closest thing to a smile that most trainees had ever seen from the veteran instructor. "You've both grown considerably since that challenge on the range a few weeks ago." "We learned from each other," Sarah replied, recognizing that their individual improvements had been the result of their willingness to adapt and incorporate new approaches. Marcus nodded in agreement. "Turns out there's value in both careful preparation and trusting your instincts. The key is knowing when each approach is most appropriate." Their success had not gone unnoticed by the other trainees or the program administrators. Word had spread about their exceptional teamwork and the way they had combined their different strengths to achieve superior results. Several other training teams began requesting advice on how to improve their own coordination and effectiveness. But the most significant recognition came in the form of an invitation to participate in an advanced training program that was typically reserved for the most promising candidates. Only 6 trainees from their entire class would be selected for this opportunity, and both Sarah and Marcus had earned their places through their demonstrated skills and growth. As they received the news about their selection, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that morning when Marcus had challenged her on the range. What had started as a test of competing philosophies had evolved into a partnership that made both of them better soldiers and better people. The advanced program would present new challenges and opportunities, but Sarah felt confident that the lessons she had learned about balancing preparation with adaptability would serve her well in whatever situations lay ahead. The advanced training facility was located in the mountains, where the thin air and challenging terrain would test every skill the selected trainees had developed. Sarah packed her gear with the same methodical care she had always shown, but now her preparation included techniques she had learned from Marcus and the other exceptional marksmen in their program. The 6 selected trainees arrived at the mountain facility to find themselves under the supervision of Master Sergeant Williams, a legendary sniper whose reputation extended far beyond their training program. Williams had served in multiple combat zones and was known for pushing trainees to their absolute limits while maintaining the highest safety standards. You've been selected because you demonstrated not just individual excellence, but the ability to learn and adapt. Williams addressed the group on their first morning. What you've accomplished so far was just the foundation. Real expertise comes from applying your skills under conditions that test every aspect of your training. The first week of advanced training focused on extreme distance shooting, with targets placed at ranges that stretched the capabilities of both equipment and human skill. Sarah found herself consistently hitting targets at distances she had never attempted before, her confidence growing with each successful shot. Marcus continued to excel as well, but Sarah noticed that he was now taking more time to assess conditions before firing, incorporating the methodical elements that had proven so effective during their partnership exercises. Their friendly competition had evolved into mutual respect and a shared commitment to continuous improvement. The other 4 trainees in the program were equally impressive, each bringing their own unique strengths and perspectives to the group. Elena Vasquez had exceptional skills in rapid target acquisition, while David Kim excelled at shooting from unconventional positions. James Morrison brought extensive experience with different types of ammunition and ballistics, and Lisa Chen had an almost supernatural ability to read wind conditions. Together, the 6 of them formed a learning community that pushed everyone to higher levels of performance. They shared techniques, challenged each other's assumptions, and worked together to solve complex shooting problems that would have been impossible for any individual to master alone. The turning point came during their 3rd week, when Williams announced that they would be participating in a realistic field exercise that would test everything they had learned. The scenario involved a simulated rescue mission where precision shooting would be critical to the success of the operation and the safety of both the team and the hypothetical hostages. This is as close to real combat conditions as we can create in a training environment, Williams explained as he briefed them on the mission parameters. You'll be working in pairs, and your shooting decisions will have consequences that extend far beyond hitting or missing your targets. Sarah was paired with Elena, while Marcus worked with David. The mission required them to provide overwatch and precision fire support for a ground team, attempting to extract civilians from a hostile environment. The ranges were extreme, the time constraints severe, and the margin for error essentially non-existent. As they moved into position before dawn, Sarah felt the familiar calm that preceded her best performances, but now it was enhanced by the confidence that came from months of intensive training and continuous improvement. Her equipment was perfectly prepared, her skills had been tested under increasingly challenging conditions, and her partnership with Elena was already showing the kind of coordination they would need for success. The mission began with a series of observation tasks, requiring the sniper teams to identify and track potential threats while remaining undetected themselves. Sarah's methodical approach to scanning and target identification proved invaluable, while Elena's quick reflexes allowed them to adapt rapidly to changing situations. When the shooting portion of the exercise began, Sarah found herself facing the most challenging shot of her career, a target at nearly 1,000 meters, partially concealed behind cover, with civilians in close proximity, requiring absolute precision to avoid any possibility of collateral damage. The wind conditions were variable, the light was challenging due to the early morning hour, and the pressure of the realistic scenario added a psychological element that no amount of range training could fully replicate. Sarah took a deep breath and began her preparation routine, but compressed it into the time constraints imposed by the tactical situation. Everything she had learned about balancing methodical preparation with quick decision-making came into play as she calculated the shot parameters and made the final adjustments to her position. The target was visible for only brief moments as it moved between cover positions, requiring her to be ready to fire the instant the opportunity presented itself. When the moment came, Sarah's shot felt perfect from the instant it left the rifle. The target dropped immediately, and the exercise controllers confirmed a clean hit that would have neutralized the threat without endangering any civilians. The success of her shot allowed the ground team to complete their mission objectives safely and efficiently. Elena's performance was equally impressive, and their coordination throughout the exercise demonstrated the level of teamwork that Williams had been trying to develop in all the advanced trainees. Marcus and David also excelled in their assigned roles, contributing to an overall mission success that exceeded the expectations of the exercise designers. During the debrief session, Williams acknowledged that the group had achieved something remarkable. "What you accomplished today represents the kind of performance that saves lives in real combat situations," he told them. "You've demonstrated not just technical skills, but the judgment and teamwork that separate good soldiers from exceptional ones." The recognition was gratifying, but Sarah knew that the real value lay in what she had learned about herself and her capabilities. The scared young woman who had quietly cleaned her rifle while others chatted nervously had evolved into a confident professional who could perform under the most demanding conditions. More importantly, she had learned that true expertise came not from perfecting a single approach, but from understanding when to apply different techniques and how to work effectively with others who brought their own strengths to challenging situations. As the advanced training program neared its conclusion, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The challenge from Marcus that had seemed so threatening at the time had actually been the catalyst for growth that she never could have achieved alone. 6 months after completing the advanced training program, Sarah found herself deployed overseas with an elite reconnaissance unit. The transition from training to actual military operations had been swift, but her preparation during the mountain exercises had proven invaluable in adapting to real-world conditions and responsibilities. Her current mission involved providing precision fire support and reconnaissance for a larger operation aimed at disrupting enemy supply lines in a mountainous region similar to where she had trained. The familiarity of the terrain gave her confidence, but she knew that real combat presented challenges that no training exercise could fully replicate. Marcus had been deployed to a different unit, but they maintained contact through secure communications when possible. His latest message had described his own successful adaptation to combat conditions, and he credited their training partnership with helping him develop the balanced approach that was serving him well in the field. Sarah's partner for this deployment was Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, the same instructor who had supervised their original challenge on the range. His presence provided continuity and mentorship that proved invaluable as she navigated the complexities of combat operations. "Remember what I told you during training," Rodriguez said as they established their observation post overlooking a suspected enemy route. "Combat is where all your preparation pays off, but you have to stay flexible enough to adapt when conditions change." Their position offered excellent visibility over several kilometers of terrain, but it also required them to remain undetected while enemy forces operated in the area. Sarah's methodical approach to camouflage and position preparation, combined with the quick decision-making skills she had developed through her partnership with Marcus, allowed them to establish an effective but concealed observation post. The first 2 days of the mission involved pure observation and intelligence gathering, as they documented enemy movement patterns and identified key targets for potential engagement. Sarah's patience and attention to detail proved crucial in building the comprehensive picture that their commanders needed to plan the larger operation. On the 3rd day, their mission parameters changed dramatically when intelligence indicated that a high-value target would be traveling through their area of responsibility. The target was an enemy commander whose capture or elimination would significantly impact enemy operations in the region. This Is what we trained for, Rodriguez said as they received the updated mission briefing. Long-range precision shot under combat conditions with significant strategic implications. The target was expected to travel in a convoy that would provide only a brief window of opportunity for engagement. The range would be approximately 900 meters, and the shot would need to be taken from a concealed position without compromising their overall mission or safety. Sarah spent the night before the operation in careful preparation, checking and rechecking her equipment while running through mental rehearsals of the shot sequence. She incorporated all the lessons she had learned about balancing methodical preparation with the ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. When dawn arrived, Sarah and Rodriguez were in position and ready for whatever the day might bring. The convoy was expected to appear sometime during the morning hours, but the exact timing remained uncertain due to the enemy's operational security measures. As the hours passed, Sarah maintained her focus while scanning the route for any sign of the approaching vehicles. Her training had taught her how to sustain concentration over extended periods, without losing the sharp edge that would be critical when the moment for action arrived. Finally, at mid-morning, dust clouds on the horizon indicated the approach of vehicles. Sarah and Rodriguez confirmed through their optics that the convoy matched the expected composition and that the target vehicle was present. The moment they had prepared for was approaching rapidly. Target confirmed in the second vehicle, Rodriguez whispered as he spotted through his high-powered scope. Range is 890 meters. Wind is variable but manageable. You have a clear shot when ready. Sarah settled into her final shooting position, her breathing automatically falling into the controlled rhythm that had become second nature. Through her scope, she could see the convoy approaching the optimal engagement point where the road curved and the target vehicle would be most vulnerable. All of her training condensed into this single moment. The methodical preparation she had always favored, the quick decision-making she had learned from Marcus, the extreme precision she had developed during advanced training, and the tactical awareness she had gained through deployment experience all came together as she tracked the moving target. The convoy reached the engagement point exactly as predicted, and Sarah could clearly see the target through her scope. Environmental conditions were optimal, her position was stable, and the shot angle was perfect. Everything aligned in a way that made success not just possible but probable. Sarah controlled her breathing, made the final adjustments for target movement and environmental factors, and gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report echoed across the valley, and through her scope she watched the target vehicle immediately lose control and crash into the roadside barrier. Hit confirmed, Rodriguez announced after observing the results through his spotting scope. Target neutralized. Mission successful. The convoy's response was immediate and chaotic, as the remaining vehicles attempted to establish security while dealing with the aftermath of the successful engagement. Sarah and Rodriguez remained in position long enough to observe and report on the enemy's reaction before beginning their carefully planned withdrawal from the area. As they moved back to their extraction point, Sarah reflected on how far she had come from that nervous trainee who had been quietly adjusting her rifle when Marcus first challenged her abilities. The skills she had, developed through training, and the confidence she had gained through experience had culminated in a successful combat mission that would contribute to the larger operational objectives. Outstanding work, Rodriguez told her as they waited for their extraction helicopter. That shot will make a real difference in this operation, and you executed it with the kind of precision and professionalism that saves lives and accomplishes missions. 2 years later, Sarah stood before a new group of trainees at the same facility where her own journey had begun. She had been selected to return as an instructor, bringing her combat experience and hard-earned expertise back to help develop the next generation of precision marksmen. The irony was not lost on her that she now occupied the same role that Rodriguez had filled when she was struggling to prove herself. The trainees before her displayed the same mixture of nervousness, determination, and raw potential that she remembered from her own early days. Some showed natural confidence while others seemed to doubt their abilities, despite having passed the rigorous selection process. Sarah could see herself in many of their faces, particularly in a quiet young man named Tommy, who spent extra time caring for his equipment while others socialized. Excellence in precision marksmanship requires more than just good eyesight and steady hands. Sarah began her first lecture to the new class. It demands a combination of methodical preparation, quick decision-making, environmental awareness, and the ability to perform under pressure that most people never experience. As she spoke, Sarah noticed Marcus entering the back of the classroom. He had also been selected as an instructor after completing his own successful deployment, and seeing him brought back memories of their original challenge and everything that had followed from that moment of confrontation on the range. After the lecture, Marcus approached her with the same easy confidence he had always possessed, but now tempered by the wisdom that came from real-world experience. "Great presentation," he said sincerely. "I like how you emphasize the balance between preparation and adaptability. That's something our students really need to understand." They walked together toward the range where the new trainees were beginning their practical exercises. Sarah observed their techniques and approaches, noting the different philosophies and backgrounds that each student brought to their training. Some reminded her of her younger self, while others clearly followed Marcus's more intuitive approach. "Remember when you challenged me on this same range?" Sarah asked as they watched a particularly methodical trainee carefully adjust his rifle scope. "I was terrified that I would embarrass myself in front of everyone." Marcus chuckled, but his expression grew more serious as he considered the memory. "I was so focused on proving that natural talent was superior to careful preparation. I didn't realize that the best approach combines both elements until we started working together." One of the new trainees approached them with a question about wind-reading techniques. Sarah recognized the uncertainty in the young woman's voice, the same self-doubt that had plagued her own early training. Instead of simply providing a technical answer, Sarah took the time to explain not just the mechanics but the confidence-building aspects of systematic preparation. "The key is developing a process you can trust," Sarah explained. "When you know you've prepared thoroughly and followed proven techniques, you can execute with confidence even under pressure." Marcus added his own perspective about trusting instincts and making quick decisions when opportunities presented themselves. Together, they provided the trainee with a comprehensive understanding that neither could have offered individually during their own student days. As the weeks progressed, Sarah found enormous satisfaction in watching her students develop their skills and confidence. She incorporated lessons from her combat deployment, sharing real-world examples of how proper training translated into mission success and lives saved. The most rewarding moment came when she witnessed two of her students engaging in their own friendly competition, similar to the challenge that had transformed her relationship with Marcus. But instead of competing philosophies, these students were building on each other's strengths from the beginning, having learned from Sarah and Marcus that excellence came from combining different approaches rather than proving the superiority of one method. One evening, as Sarah cleaned her own rifle in preparation for the next day's training, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The scared young woman who had been quietly adjusting her equipment while others chatted had evolved into a combat veteran and instructor whose expertise was helping shape future soldiers, her grandfathers. Lessons about respect for weapons and careful preparation remained central to her approach, but they had been enhanced by everything she had learned about adaptability, teamwork, and leadership. The challenge from Marcus that had once seemed so threatening had actually been the catalyst for growth that exceeded anything she could have imagined. Rodriguez, now serving as the facility's senior instructor, joined her in the equipment room as she finished her evening routine. "I've been watching your progress with the new class," he said with obvious pride. "You're developing into exactly the kind of instructor this program needs." "I learned from the best," Sarah replied, acknowledging the role he had played in her development. "And I learned that the most important lesson isn't about shooting techniques or equipment. It's about having the courage to accept challenges and grow from them." As she secured her rifle and prepared to leave for the day, Sarah noticed Tommy, the quiet trainee who reminded her so much of herself, still working methodically on his equipment while others had already departed. She approached him with the same kind of supportive guidance that Rodriguez had provided during her own struggles. "Preparation is important," she told him. "But don't forget that confidence comes from knowing you can adapt and perform when conditions aren't perfect." The best marksmen combine careful preparation with the ability to trust themselves when the moment arrives. Tommy looked up with gratitude and determination in his eyes, and Sarah recognized the same hunger for excellence that had driven her own journey from uncertain trainee to accomplished instructor and combat veteran, walking toward her quarters as the sun set over the same range where her transformation had begun. Sarah understood that her story had come full circle. The challenge that had once threatened to expose her limitations had instead revealed capabilities she never knew she possessed. More importantly, she was now in a position to help others discover their own potential and find the courage to accept the challenges that would define their own paths to excellence. The quiet young woman who had been adjusting her rifle that morning years ago had found her voice, her confidence, and her purpose, and now she was using all three to help others begin their own journeys toward becoming the best versions of themselves.